Hi, this is Shambhavi. Welcome to my weekly podcast about spirituality, love, death, devotion, and waking up while living in a messy world. The Satsang with Shambhavi podcast is recorded live each week with students of our nonprofit community, Jaya Kula. For more information and to find out about attending a satsang, visit jayakula.org. Thanks for listening. Much love to you, wherever and however you are.
I'm still struggling so much. Like, it's about impressing people. I just get so tired of it. So I wondered if you could talk about it.
Well, you've already answered your own question when you say I'm so tired of it. The cure is to just get so incredibly tired of it that you can't even choose to do it anymore. These kind of karmas, the first inkling that they might resolve or dissolve or go away is when we notice them. Nothing's really going to resolve unless we notice it. And then the second sort of level is we stop justifying it and we realize how entrapped we are by it. And then we just start to get sick of ourselves. And we start to feel how exhausting the whole business is, the whole enterprise of maintaining these things. And then we feel it's so big, we'll never get rid of it. It starts to feel so overwhelming. We think to ourselves, I'm never going to get out of this. And we feel desperation. And then at that point, or a little after that point, our desperation becomes so huge that it actually just goes away. We get so sick of it that our own tiredness of it cuts the ties to it. So that's one of the major, not the only, but it's one of the major ways that karma resolves. We can just say patterns. People don't want to use a Sanskrit word. So you're right in the middle of that, and it's fantastic. It will go away because you want it to so desperately that it simply won't find any foothold in you anymore. It's good to cry about it too, when your tears are heard by the mother. All of these things are so good and such a relief for me as your teacher to see and hear. We've all been on this train. We've all been on this track. We've all experienced this if we're lucky. So try to stay in touch with how exhausting this is, because that's really the golden way out of this.
You've been saying it for a long time. To me.
Well, yeah, but everything has its time. I can say stuff for decades or maybe eons, but I'm not the only factor. I'm not in control of people's lives. Sometimes I say something and it's right at the right moment when other factors are also collaborating to make something resolve. There's always a time and timing for something.
I've been thinking about taking refuge versus finding comfort. And I'm wondering if you can talk about that.
Well, taking refuge can be comforting. But if you take refuge, I mean, we don't do that in this tradition, but just the equivalent is recognizing that teacher teachings and community are central in your life and that you're going to make them central. That's like taking refuge in a nutshell. If you just take refuge like with a Buddhist teacher and then you go home and that's it, nothing else happens, then it's just like a comforting moment and maybe something comforting that you think of. But if you really engage with teacher teachings and presence and community, then it gets kind of dangerous. So it can get uncomfortable at times. It's not always comfortable if it's actually working. So being comfortable is good unless you make it your life's purpose. I mean, there's nothing wrong with sometimes being comfortable. But if we have internalized or defined discomfort bad, comfortable good, then we're going to lead a very limited life because we're going to shy away from anything that's uncomfortable. And the truth is that change is always uncomfortable at times, always. And as a matter of fact, life is just always uncomfortable at times, whether or not we change. So, in fact, life is very, very, very uncomfortable at times, especially if we're determined to have more clear seeing about it. If we're not willing to see clearly, we cannot change. Everything's just going to remain the same if we aren't willing to see clearly. So the sort of opening of the door to not living a life that's comfort seeking is take refuge in what's really happening. Take refuge in clear seeing. Take refuge in honesty. If you want to have realization, if you're here because you want to have realization, then honesty and clear seeing and courage to see how things actually are, you cannot finesse that. You cannot fake that. You cannot ignore it. And that's uncomfortable, right? It's uncomfortable. So we don't want to make a thing where discomfort becomes some badge of how wonderful we are. Basically, we just want to be uncomfortable when things are uncomfortable. And we want to be comfortable when it's appropriate to be comfortable. They're not mutually exclusive, and we're not trying to be anything. So what we're trying to be is honest and real. That's the basis of waking up. And refuge, taking refuge at its root, if we could say anything, it's taking refuge in the real, what's actually happening, which supposedly Buddha, Sangha, and Dharma represent, but, maybe. If we want to say, what do those things represent? They represent clear seeing and taking refuge in what actually is and dedicating ourselves to that and to eventually perceiving things very differently than we do right now. Because clear seeing isn't just ordinary clear seeing. It's not just seeing what's happening in the world or with ourselves, although that is a great place to start. But it's also seeing through all of our received concepts about reality. Then we get into a more extraordinary form of seeing. But start with honesty. That's just so important.
I just talked about intimacy, and I'm curious what that means, like intimacy between people. You can share some thoughts. I'd really appreciate that.
Sure. I think the first experience of someone doing this kind of practice, if they don't already have this experience, because I'm not saying that you need to do this practice to experience intimacy. I'm just saying that's what it's about. That would be one way of describing what it's for. For almost everybody, it will deepen your experience of intimacy, if not be your first experience of it. On a sort of ordinary level, it means that there's nothing interfering between you and your interactions with others. There's a sense of openness and spontaneity and lack of planning or presupposing or projecting. It's like you're looking at another person through totally open space. There's none of your usual emotions and thought patterns dragged along from other parts of your life or lifetimes. And there's a sense of freshness. It's just this feeling of freshness and surprise and curiosity that would be unmediated by any of the usual things that we mediate relationships with. In the Hindu traditions, they have these levels of everything. So there's usually like 3 levels: low, medium, or ordinary, and exalted. And each of the 3 levels has 3 levels. So there's low, low, medium, low, and high, low. Then there's low, ordinary, medium, ordinary, and extraordinary, ordinary. And then there's low, exalted, medium, exalted, and very exalted. This would be like extraordinary, ordinary, what I'm describing. Once you get into the top tier, we're talking about actually seeing how things are on the level of their existence. When that happens, you are experiencing something of what's called the equality of all phenomena. You're experiencing that everything, including space itself, is made of the same living awareness. And in that zone, you do not feel any space between you and anything else. And the sense of intimacy is absolutely like everything is an aspect of yourself. I can say those words, but I'm not expecting you to actually know what I'm talking about. The idea in the middle level is more to get to the point where your relationships are uncontrived and unmediated and have the sense of freshness and possibility and openness.
I was wondering if you had any thoughts about the feeling of just the tiredness of being a cobbled together person.
What I think you're talking about is when you feel this isn't your place or you're in an alien environment in some way or another. That could be your family, or it could be a culture, it could be a work environment, it could be anything, or it could just be like Earth. Some people's response to that sort of not knowing how to be here is to look and see what other people are doing or try to conform to what other people are doing and just kind of like, oh, I'll do what, oh, okay, I like Tejas' smile, I'll borrow that. And that sounds cool, what somebody's doing, I'll just borrow that. And then cobbling together a persona or a way to be in the world just to make your way through. And it's basically like a mask that's got parts from all different people. Do you remember, or do you feel now, a time when you felt this isn't my place, or I'm in a hostile alien environment, or I don't know what I'm doing here?
I feel like this isn't my place is just like what I felt my whole life, and it's a very familiar feeling to me.
When you feel like this isn't your place, then the ways of the place don't feel comfortable. Back in the day, back in my teens, when we used to do psychedelics and it wasn't medicinal, I remember the few times that I did LSD, I had the same experience, which is I totally forgot how to participate in the normative formulaic ways of relating, like how to go into a store and ask for something and say please and thank you. And I would just forgot how to do those things. And I think because the formulaic quality of everything never sat well with me. And so that just kind of fell away. And then I just was like, I don't even know how to go to the store. But in any case, what I'd say is if you're just tired of it and it's making you tired and it's draining you, if you can sense the artificiality of any way that you're relating, just pick anything and stop doing it. You don't have to come up with a new thing to put in its place. But if there's any particular aspect of how you are relating to others or getting by in life, it might be a way you say things or a way you emote or a way you present yourself. I don't know. It could be anything. And it's not necessarily negative things. It could be things that seem enjoyable too. But when you sense the artificiality of them, and that artificiality means we're pushing out too much energy. This is why it feels tiring. It takes a lot less energy to just be natural and authentic than it does to push out a personality. It's like we're constantly in the factory of making up our personality and we never get time off. If you can even find small moments or chunks of that person that you've made up, that you could just stop doing that performance and just see how it feels. Try it out and let me know how it goes. Satsang with Shambhavi is produced by Jaya Kula, a nonprofit community offering opportunities to learn and practice in the direct realization traditions of Trika Shaivism and Dzogchen. If you enjoyed listening, please help us keep this podcast and many other teachings open to all by making a monthly or one-time donation. Visit jayakula.org to make a donation and explore more of our offerings.